The Great Hall of the Galactic Tribunal Station stretched wide and tall, built to accommodate species from across the known galaxy. Crystalline walls reflected the light of a distant star, casting rainbow shadows across the assembled crowd. Representatives from 40 different worlds sat in curved rows, their varied forms a testament to the diversity of intelligent life. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on legs, others floated in containment fields. But today, all eyes turned toward the witness stand. Commander Vexthor walked slowly across the polished floor. His scales, once a brilliant blue that marked him as a decorated officer of the Krillian Empire, had faded to a dull gray. His claws clicked against the metal grating with each hesitant step. He moved like a creature much older than his 40 cycles, his shoulders hunched, his tail dragging behind him. The proud warrior who had commanded fleets was gone. What remained was something broken. The tribunal judge, a towering Volante with 3 eyes and robes that shifted colors, gestured toward the witness platform. Vexthor climbed the steps and stood before the assembly. His translator device hummed to life, ready to convert his words into the 100 languages needed for universal understanding. "State your name and rank for the record," the judge said, her voice echoing through the chamber. Commander Vexthor, 3rd Fleet of the Krillian Empire, retired. His voice came out as a raspy whisper. He had not spoken much in the years since the war ended. "You have been called to testify about the conflict known as the Human Alliance War. Do you consent to provide testimony?" "I do." Vexthor's tongue flicked nervously across his snout, a Krillian sign of deep anxiety. "Then begin. Tell us how the war started." Vexthor closed his eyes for a moment. The memories flooded back, unwelcome but unavoidable. He opened them again and began to speak. 15 years ago, the Krillian Empire discovered a new species. They called themselves humans, and they came from a planet they named Earth. It was a world in a distant arm of the galaxy, far from the civilized core systems. Our scouts reported that humans had just achieved faster-than-light travel. They were new to the stars, like children taking their first steps. He paused, his claws gripping the edge of the platform. "We thought they would be easy to conquer. The Krillian Empire had subjugated 40 systems before we encountered humans. 40 different species had bent to our will. Some fought, but they all eventually submitted. It was the natural order. The strong ruled and the weak served." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The Krillian Empire's expansion had been brutal, but legal under the old galactic laws. Conquest was permitted if the targeted species had not yet joined the Galactic Council. Humans had not joined. They had barely known the Council existed. Earth was classified as a death world, Vexthor continued. That should have warned us, but we dismissed it. Many worlds are dangerous. Heavy gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme weather. These things make species weak, we thought. They must struggle just to survive so they cannot become strong warriors. He laughed, a bitter sound that echoed strangely through his translator. We were fools. We did not understand what a death world truly means. We did not understand what it creates. The judge leaned forward. "Explain what you mean. Earth is not just dangerous. It is actively hostile to life. The gravity is crushing by galactic standards. The atmosphere contains oxygen, which is highly reactive and toxic to most species. The planet experiences violent storms, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and dramatic temperature swings. Predators hunt in every environment. Diseases evolve and spread with terrifying speed. Nearly everything on Earth can kill you." Vexthor's scales seemed to pale further, and humans evolved there. They survived there. They thrived there. We should have understood what that meant. A species that must fight for survival every single day does not become weak. It becomes something else entirely. He took a shuddering breath before continuing. The High Command sent an ultimatum to Earth. Submit to Krillian rule, provide tribute, and accept our governance. Refuse and face military action. We expected them to surrender. They were one planet. We were an empire of 40 systems. The choice should have been obvious. What was their response? The judge asked. They told us to leave. That was all. Just leave. No negotiations, no counter-offers. They said their system was not ours to take, and if we tried, we would regret it. The High Command found this amusing. How could one primitive world threaten an empire? Vexthor's voice grew quieter. We sent the 3rd Fleet to Proxima Station, humanity's first deep space outpost. It was a small facility. Perhaps 500 humans stationed there to study a nearby red dwarf star. We brought 5,000 soldiers. The orders were simple. Overwhelm them, capture the station, and use it as a staging ground for the invasion of Earth. The chamber had grown silent. Every being present knew how this story ended, but they had never heard it told by a Krillian officer. The battle began at the 6th hour of their cycle. We approached with our weapons powered but not yet firing, expecting them to signal surrender. Instead, they fired first. Their weapons were primitive compared to ours, but they were effective enough. More importantly, they fought with a fury I had never witnessed. Vexthor's claws scraped against the metal. We outnumbered them 5-1. We had superior firepower, better armor, more experience. By all tactical calculations, the battle should have lasted less than an hour. It lasted 3 days. 3 days? The judge's surprise was evident. For a small outpost? Yes, the humans refused to retreat. They held every corridor, every room, every inch of that station. When we breached one section, they sealed themselves in another and continued fighting. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they used tools as weapons. When their tools broke, they used their hands. His voice took on a haunted quality. I watched a human female, injured and bleeding, tackle one of my soldiers. She was half his size, wounded in 3 places, and should have been dead, but she wrapped her arms around his neck and would not let go, no matter how hard he struck her. She held on until they both died. The tribunal chamber remained silent. Vexthor continued. We eventually won. We took the station. Of the 500 humans, none survived. But we lost almost 2,000 soldiers. The High Command called it a victory. Those of us who fought there knew better. We had learned something terrifying that day. What did you learn? The judge asked softly. Vexthor looked up, his eyes meeting those of the various species gathered in the hall. We learned that humans do not surrender. We learned that when their bodies should fail, something inside them keeps them fighting. We learned that death does not frighten them the way it frightens us. He paused, gathering his strength. Later, human prisoners told us about something called adrenaline. It is a chemical their bodies produce in response to danger. It makes them faster, stronger, and unable to feel pain. They carry their own combat drug inside them, and it activates automatically whenever they fight. We conquered Proxima Station, but the cost was too high. The High Command refused to see it. They ordered the invasion of Earth to proceed. They said the station was merely an anomaly, that humans had fought so hard because they were cornered. They believed that in open warfare and proper military engagements, our superiority would be absolute. Vexthor's tail twitched, another sign of distress. They were wrong. Proxima Station was not an anomaly. It was a warning. Those 500 humans showed us exactly what we would face, but we did not listen. We could not imagine that an entire species could fight that way, and so the war began. Vexthor took a moment to drink from the container provided for him. The liquid was specially formulated for Krillian biology, but it tasted like ash in his mouth. Everything had tasted that way since the war. The tribunal waited patiently as he composed himself, preparing to continue his testimony. The invasion of human territory began in the 2nd year of the war, he said, his voice steadier now but still carrying the weight of trauma. By that time we had captured 3 of their outer colonies. Each victory cost us more than the last, but the High Command believed we were winning. They said humans would break eventually, that no species could sustain such losses. The judge made a gesture for him to continue. Vexthor's eyes grew distant as he pulled up memories he had tried desperately to bury. I was reassigned to the ground forces and sent to Kepler 442b, a world humans had been terraforming for 20 years. It was a jungle planet thick with vegetation and rain. The air was breathable for both species, which made it valuable strategic territory. My unit was tasked with hunting down human resistance fighters who had been attacking our supply lines. He paused, his scales rippling with remembered fear. We were hunters. The Krillian people evolved as ambush predators on our homeworld. Our eyes can see in 3 different light spectrums. Our hearing detects sounds far beyond what most species perceive. Our sense of smell can track prey across vast distances. We are born hunters, and we are very good at it. The humans knew this. Intelligence reports told them what we were capable of. So they adapted. Vexthor's claws clenched. That was the second lesson humans taught us. They adapt faster than any species has a right to. We tracked a patrol of 15 human soldiers into the jungle. They had attacked one of our supply convoys and disappeared into the dense forest. Standard procedure was to surround them, use our superior numbers and senses to locate them and eliminate them quickly. We had 70 soldiers. They had 15. It should have been simple. The commander's voice dropped lower. They let us find their camp. It was too easy. but our commander was confident. We surrounded the position at dawn and prepared to attack. When we moved in, the camp was empty. Just equipment left behind, still warm from recent use. Then the explosions started. His whole body tensed at the memory. They had buried explosives under the paths leading to the camp. They knew which routes we would take because they understood how hunters think. They had studied us, learned our tactics, and turned them against us. The first wave of our assault lost 20 soldiers before we even saw a single human. Then they attacked from the trees. Humans are excellent climbers, something we did not anticipate. They moved through the canopy above us, firing down while we scrambled for cover. Our thermal vision could not distinguish them from the surrounding jungle. Our hearing was overwhelmed by the sounds of the forest and the explosions. Our sense of smell was useless in the rain. Vexthor's voice grew hollow. We were no longer the hunters. We had become the prey. The battle lasted for 6 hours, 6 hours of chaos and confusion. They hit us and disappeared. We would advance and walk into traps. We would take cover and they would attack from a different direction. They moved constantly, never staying in one place, never fighting the way we expected. Finally, we cornered one of them, a human female separated from her unit. She was wounded, bleeding from her side. Our commander ordered her to surrender. She looked at him and smiled. Then she ran. The tribunal leaned forward, captivated by the story. Vexthor continued. She ran and we chased her. It seemed foolish at first. She was wounded and alone. But she kept running and we kept chasing. Hours passed. She should have collapsed from exhaustion or blood loss. She should have died. But she kept running. That was when I learned about human endurance. On their world, humans were not the fastest predators. They were not the strongest. But they could run longer than anything else. They would chase their prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Then they would kill it. Vexthor's voice shook. She was not running away from us. She was running us into an ambush. For 6 hours, she led us deeper into the jungle, always staying just ahead, always visible enough that we would not give up the chase. My unit followed, believing we were about to catch her. Our commander was obsessed with the pursuit. He refused to stop, refused to call for support. When we finally caught up to her, she had reached a narrow canyon. She stood at the entrance, still bleeding, still smiling. She spoke to us in our language. She said, "Thank you for following. My friends have a gift for you." The commander's scales had gone completely pale now. The canyon walls exploded. The humans had planted charges all along the rock face. Tons of stone fell on my unit. The canyon became a tomb. Only 12 of us escaped. 70 soldiers destroyed by 15 humans and 1 wounded woman who should have been dead hours earlier. But the story does not end there. Vexthor said, his voice barely above a whisper. We found her body in the rubble days later, when we returned with reinforcements. She had died in the blast she triggered. She had sacrificed herself to kill us, and she died with that smile still on her face. He looked up at the tribunal. Later, I learned her name from human records. Corporal Maria Santos, age 24. She had been a runner before she joined the military. In human terms, she ran marathons for recreation. She was trained to run long distances without stopping. And she used that training to kill 70 of our best soldiers. Our commander wrote in his report that it was a waste. Why would she throw her life away when she could have escaped? Why not flee and live to fight another day? He did not understand. I think I do now, though it took me years. Vexthor's voice grew thoughtful. She knew she was dying. The wound in her side was fatal and she had no medical supplies. She could have hidden and died slowly in the jungle. Instead, she used the last hours of her life to hurt us as much as possible. She chose how she would die and she made her death count for something. That is what humans do. They do not surrender and they do not waste anything, not even their deaths. Every loss becomes a lesson. Every sacrifice has a purpose. They turn everything into a weapon, including themselves. The judge spoke carefully. How did this affect your forces? It terrified us, Vexthor admitted. Word spread through the Krillian military. Stories of humans who fought with impossible endurance, who refused to die, who turned defeat into victory through sheer will. Morale began to crack. Soldiers started to fear human encounters. They called humans the ones who do not stop. The High Command tried to suppress the stories, but they spread anyway. How do you keep soldiers confident when every battle report confirms their fears? How do you maintain order when veterans return home with haunted eyes and stories of prey that hunts the hunters? Vexthor looked down at his claws, remembering. We tried different tactics. We avoided jungles and forests where humans could use ambush tactics. We stuck to open terrain where our technology would give us the advantage. But humans adapted to that too. They always adapted. On Kepler 442b, the remaining human forces learned to fight at night, when our vision was slightly less effective than theirs. They learned to mask their heat signatures. They learned to move silently through terrain we thought impassable. Every advantage we had, they found a way to counter. The campaign that was supposed to last weeks stretched into months. Every kilometer we advanced cost us dozens of soldiers. The jungle became a nightmare where death could come from any direction. And always the humans kept fighting. Eventually, we retreated from Kepler 442b. The High Command called it a strategic withdrawal. Those of us who survived called it what it was, defeat. A handful of human resistance fighters had held off an entire Krillian invasion force through determination, adaptation, and a refusal to accept death. That was the second lesson, Vexthor concluded. Humans are not just warriors. They are survivors who evolved to outlast anything that threatened them. And when you cannot outlast them, you cannot defeat them. The tribunal chamber remained quiet as Vexthor gathered himself for the next part of his testimony. His tail had stopped twitching, but his claws still gripped the edge of the platform. The memories he was about to share were clearly the most difficult. The 4th year of the war brought me to New Sarajevo, he began, his voice tight with emotion. It was a human colony world, established 50 years before the war. 2 million humans lived there, mostly civilians. The High Command believed that targeting their civilian infrastructure would break their will to fight. We were ordered to cut off supplies, isolate military units, and force surrender through economic pressure. He paused, his scales darkening with shame. We targeted medical convoys. Under galactic law, medical personnel are non-combatants. They wear distinctive markings, travel under protected status, and are never to be engaged in warfare. But the High Command argued that human doctors and medics were legitimate targets because they kept soldiers alive to fight again. The judge's expression hardened. That is a violation of the Galactic Conventions on Warfare. Yes, Vexthor agreed quietly. I know that now. At the time, I followed orders. I told myself we were ending the war faster, saving lives in the long run. I told myself many things to sleep at night. He continued, his voice heavy with regret. My unit received intelligence about a human medical convoy moving through a mountain pass. 20 vehicles carrying doctors, nurses, medical supplies, and wounded soldiers being evacuated from a forward base. We set up an ambush with 200 soldiers. Our orders were to destroy the convoy and eliminate all personnel. The attack began at midday. We blocked both ends of the pass and opened fire on the convoy. The vehicles were lightly armored, designed for transport rather than combat. They should have been destroyed in minutes. But the humans did not accept their fate quietly. Vexthor's eyes grew distant. The convoy's security detail, maybe 30 soldiers, immediately established a defensive perimeter. But more shocking was what the medical personnel did. They did not flee. They did not surrender. They grabbed weapons from the wounded soldiers and fought back. I watched a human doctor, a female with gray hair and the markings of a senior medical officer, pull an injured soldier behind cover while firing a pistol with her other hand. She moved with precision, each action deliberate and efficient. She would fire 3 shots to keep us back, then drag another wounded person to safety, then fire again. His voice cracked slightly. Her name was Dr. Sarah Chen. I learned this later from captured records. She was 58 years old, a grandmother, and had spent 30 years as a trauma surgeon. She had saved thousands of lives. And when we attacked her convoy, she fought like a soldier. The battle was chaotic. We expected quick victory, but the humans turned their vehicles into defensive positions. They used medical equipment as improvised weapons. One nurse threw containers of liquid oxygen that exploded when shot. Another used a surgical laser as a cutting weapon in close combat. Vexthor's claws scraped against the metal, but Dr. Chen was the most formidable. She held a choke point between 2 overturned vehicles, a narrow space only one person could pass through at a time. For 20 minutes, she held that position alone. She fired until her weapon overheated, then picked up another from a fallen soldier. When that ran out of ammunition, she used a medical bone saw. 20 minutes, he repeated, his voice filled with disbelief even now. One elderly human female, a healer not a warrior, held off trained Krillian soldiers for 20 minutes. She was wounded 3 times but did not fall. She kept fighting because behind her were wounded soldiers who could not defend themselves. Finally, one of my soldiers threw an explosive device past her position. The blast knocked her down and we overran the defensive line. When we reached her, she was still alive, still trying to reach for a weapon. We took her as a prisoner of war. The tribunal was silent. Vexthor took another drink before continuing. After the battle, I walked through the convoy. We had killed 47 humans. 23 were wounded soldiers who never had a chance to fight. 18 were medical personnel. 6 were security forces. The losses on our side were 96 dead, with another 40 wounded. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. We outnumbered them 4-1. We had superior weapons and tactical position, and they still killed 96 of us while defending their wounded. I spoke with Dr. Chen before she was transferred to a prison facility. I asked her why she fought. Why did she not surrender and save her own life? She looked at me with such fierce intensity that I stepped back despite the chains holding her. Vexithor's voice took on a tone of wonder mixed with horror. She said, "Those were my patients. I swore an oath to protect them. You think that oath ends when someone points a gun at me? You think I would abandon people who trusted me with their lives? I am a doctor, but I am also human. We do not leave our people behind." I did not understand then. In Krillian culture, the wounded are a burden. They consume resources and slow down the healthy. In warfare, wounded soldiers who cannot fight are left behind. It is practical, logical. Why waste resources on those who cannot contribute? His scales rippled with emotion. But humans see it differently. They will die for their wounded. They will sacrifice themselves to save someone who is already damaged. It makes no tactical sense, yet it makes them stronger. The story of Dr. Chen spread through both human and Krillian forces. For humans, she became a hero, a symbol of their values. Songs were written about her stand. Her name was spoken with reverence. For Krillian forces, she became something else. Proof that every human was dangerous, that even their healers were warriors. Vexthor looked up at the tribunal. That was the third lesson humans taught us. They possess something we do not have, something we never understood. They call it loyalty or pack bonding. They form emotional connections so strong that they will die for each other, even for strangers of their own species. Dr. Chen did not know most of the soldiers she died protecting. They were not her family or her friends. They were simply humans who needed her help. That was enough. For a human, that is always enough. This concept is alien to most galactic species. We form alliances based on mutual benefit. We cooperate when it serves our interests. But humans bond with each other in ways that defy logic. They will sacrifice everything for someone they met only hours before. The judge leaned forward. Did this realization change your military strategy? The High Command tried to use it against them, Vexthor admitted. We thought if humans cared so much about each other, we could break them by targeting civilians. We bombed cities, destroyed agricultural centers, cut off food supplies. We believed that seeing their families starve would break the soldiers' will to fight. His voice filled with bitter irony. It had the opposite effect. Every attack on civilians made human soldiers fight harder. Every child killed was another reason for vengeance. Every destroyed city was another wound that demanded retribution. We were not breaking them. We were making them stronger. I saw human prisoners of war who were starving, tortured, held in terrible conditions. By all logic, they should have been broken. But when rescue forces freed them, those same prisoners picked up weapons and immediately rejoined the fight. Some had been held for months, some for years. It did not matter. They came back fighting. Vexthor's scales had turned almost white. Dr. Chen was freed in a prisoner exchange after 2 years of captivity. Medical records show she had been wounded 9 times in the original ambush, more than I initially reported. Any one of those wounds should have killed her. She survived through sheer determination and human medical science. After her release, she did not retire. She returned to the medical corps. She served for 3 more years until the war ended. When I heard this, I could not believe it. We had nearly killed her. We had imprisoned her. We had taken years of her life. And she came back. That is what humans do. They do not break. They do not give up. They take every blow, every setback, every tragedy, and they turn it into determination. The more you hurt them, the harder they fight back. He looked around the tribunal chamber. Dr. Chen is alive today. She runs a hospital on New Sarajevo, training the next generation of human doctors. When I learned this, I sent her a message. I apologized for my role in the attack. I expected anger, perhaps hatred. She responded with one sentence, I forgive you, but I will never forget. That is humanity in 4 words. They can forgive, but they never forget. They remember every wound, every loss, every betrayal, and they make sure it never happens again. Vexthor's voice grew softer. The attack on the medical convoy was not an isolated incident. Similar actions happened throughout the war, and each one taught us the same lesson. Humans fight hardest when they are protecting others. Their compassion is not weakness. It is their greatest weapon. Vexthor shifted his weight on the witness platform, his movements showing the weariness of someone reliving painful memories. The tribunal had been in session for hours, but no one had left. The chamber remained packed with representatives from across the galaxy, all listening to the testimony of a broken Krillian commander. The 6th year of the war brought me to Armstrong Colony, Vexthor said, his voice steadier now but laden with resignation. It was humanity's largest off-world settlement, home to 300,000 civilians and 50,000 military personnel. The colony was built inside a massive crater on a moon with minimal atmosphere. The humans lived under transparent domes, growing their own food, mining resources, and conducting research. He paused, gathering his thoughts. By the 6th year, the war was not going as the High Command had predicted. We had not broken humanity's will. We had not conquered Earth. Instead, we were locked in a grinding conflict that cost us more with each passing month. The High Command decided Armstrong Colony would be our decisive victory. We would capture or destroy humanity's largest off-world population and force Earth to surrender. I was given command of the orbital blockade, 15 warships under my direct control, with orders to seal off the colony completely. No supplies in, no people out. The strategy was simple: starve them into submission. Cut off food deliveries, prevent supply ships from landing, and wait. Human civilians would force their military to surrender rather than watch their children starve. Vexthor's scales darkened. We estimated it would take 3 months. The colony had food reserves for approximately 90 days. After that, they would have no choice but to accept our terms. It seemed like a clean victory, one that would not cost us many soldiers. The blockade began on the first day of their spring season. We established orbit and sent the ultimatum: surrender the colony, and all civilians would be allowed to evacuate safely. Resist, and we would enforce the blockade until starvation forced compliance. The colony's military commander, General Marcus Webb, sent a one-word reply: no. The Krillian commander's voice took on a tone of grudging respect. The first month passed. We detected no attempts to break the blockade. Our sensors showed normal activity in the colony. We assumed they were hoping for a relief force that would never come. Human fleets were engaged across multiple fronts. No help was coming to Armstrong Colony. The second month passed. Still no surrender. Our intelligence reported that food rationing had begun in the colony, but there were no signs of panic. This concerned my officers. Humans should have been rioting, demanding their leaders surrender. Instead, the colony remained calm and organized. The third month passed and the humans should have been starving. But our sensors detected something strange. Agricultural output from the colony's greenhouses had not decreased. If anything, it had increased. We could not understand how this was possible. Vexthor's voice filled with reluctant admiration. We learned later what they had done. The humans had converted every available space into growing food. They planted crops in corridors, in storage rooms, in residential units. They used every centimeter of space under the domes. They even grew food in the craters outside the domes in small pressurized greenhouses built from spare parts. But it was not enough. The colony still did not have enough food to sustain 300,000 people indefinitely. So the humans adapted. They synthesized proteins from the moon's mineral deposits using chemical processes. They grew algae in water recycling tanks. They processed waste into nutrients for their crops. They turned mining equipment into food production systems. His claws clicked against the platform. Every human in the colony, civilian and military alike, worked on survival. Scientists who studied distant stars now studied agriculture. Engineers who built starships now built irrigation systems. Children worked in the greenhouses alongside their parents. The entire colony became focused on one goal: survive until help arrived. 6 months passed. Then 8 months. Then a year. The blockade continued and we grew frustrated. The High Command demanded answers. How could they still be alive? Where were they getting supplies? We tightened the blockade, added more ships, scanned every centimeter of the moon's surface for hidden supply caches. We found nothing because there was nothing to find. The humans were not receiving supplies. They were creating everything they needed from what they already had. They had turned a moon colony into a self-sustaining system through sheer determination and ingenuity. Vexthor's voice grew quieter. During the 15th month of the blockade, the colony sent us a message. Not a surrender, but a broadcast transmitted on all frequencies so every ship in the fleet would receive it. I still remember the words exactly, he recited from memory, his voice taking on the cadence of the human commander who had spoken them. You can break our ships, crack our domes, poison our air, but you cannot break our will. We are humans. We survived ice ages that froze our planet. We survived plagues that killed billions. We survived wars against ourselves. We have faced extinction 1,000 times and refused to accept it. You are not special. You are not unique. You are just the latest challenge, and we will overcome you like we overcame everything else. The tribunal chamber was completely silent. Vexthor continued. That message changed everything. It spread through our fleet and then to other Krillian forces across the galaxy. Soldiers began to question the war. If humans could survive impossible conditions, if they could adapt to anything, how could we ever truly defeat them? The 18th month brought another surprise. Our sensors detected new energy signatures in the colony. When we investigated, we discovered the humans had reverse-engineered captured Krillian weapons. They had studied our technology and learned how to reproduce it using their own manufacturing capabilities. This was supposed to be impossible. Krillian weapons used principles that required decades of research to understand, but humans had figured it out in less than 2 years while under siege, while starving, while fighting for survival every single day. His scales rippled with remembered shock. They did not just copy our weapons. They improved them. Human engineers made our designs more efficient, more powerful, more reliable. Then they began mounting these weapons on mining vehicles, turning industrial equipment into military hardware. The colony that was supposed to surrender months ago was now armed and dangerous. But still, we maintained the blockade. The High Command refused to admit failure. They sent more ships, more resources, more soldiers. Armstrong Colony had become a symbol, and neither side could afford to lose. The 24th month marked the turning point. Human relief forces finally arrived, a fleet that had fought its way across half the galaxy to reach Armstrong Colony. The battle that followed was fierce. We outnumbered the human fleet 3-2, but they fought with desperate intensity. Vexthor's voice grew hollow. Then the colony joined the fight. Those mining vehicles with captured weapons launched from the surface. Those makeshift weapons they had built started firing on our ships. The colony we had besieged for 2 years, the people we had tried to starve, came out fighting. The humans coordinated their attack perfectly. The relief fleet engaged us from one direction, while the colony's forces hit us from another. We were caught between two enemies, and we had not prepared for the colony to have any offensive capability. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, 7 of my 15 ships were destroyed. The rest were damaged and forced to retreat. The blockade was broken. Armstrong Colony was free, his voice filled with bitter acceptance. But the true defeat was not military. It was psychological. Armstrong Colony had survived 2 years under siege conditions that should have killed everyone within 6 months. They had not just survived. They had thrived. They had innovated. They had fought back. Word of Armstrong Colony spread across the galaxy. Every species heard the story of 300,000 humans who refused to surrender, who turned starvation into innovation, who fought back using weapons they built themselves from captured technology. Vexthor looked up at the tribunal. That was the 4th lesson. Humans see extinction-level threats not as fate but as problems to solve. They do not accept death. They do not accept defeat. They look at impossible situations and ask, how do we survive this? And then they find a way. After Armstrong Colony, Krillian morale collapsed. Soldiers no longer believed we could win. How do you defeat an enemy that refuses to die? How do you break an enemy that grows stronger under pressure? How do you conquer a species that treats every setback as a challenge to overcome? The High Command tried to continue the war, but support was crumbling. Families refused to send their children to fight. Colonies began demanding peace. The economic cost of the war had become unbearable, and always the humans kept fighting. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I was evacuated from the Armstrong system after the battle. I never returned to military service. The things I had seen, the lessons I had learned, they broke something inside me. I realized we had started a war with a species we could never defeat, and that realization destroyed me. The tribunal chamber felt heavy with the weight of Vex Thor's testimony. Hours had passed since he first took the stand, and the gathered representatives from across the galaxy had remained transfixed by his words. Now, as he prepared to conclude his account, a palpable tension filled the air. The war lasted 9 years in total, Vex Thor said, his voice weary but determined to finish. 3 years after Armstrong Colony, the Krillian Empire formally sued for peace. The High Command claimed it was a strategic decision, that continuing the war no longer served our interests. But those of us who fought knew the truth. We sued for peace because we were losing. He shifted his weight, his tail hanging limply behind him. At the start of the war, the Krillian Empire controlled 40 systems. We had superior numbers, superior technology, and centuries of military experience. We believed humanity, with their single home system and a handful of colonies, would fall within months. But we were wrong about everything. By the end of the war, humans controlled 15 formerly Krillian systems. They had not just defended themselves. They had counterattacked and won. They took our worlds and we could not take them back. Vex Thor's scales had returned to their natural blue color now, as if telling his story had released some of the burden he carried. The peace negotiations were difficult. The Krillian High Command wanted to maintain some dignity in defeat. But humans negotiated from a position of absolute strength. They dictated terms and we accepted them. The treaty established Earth as the neutral arbiter for all galactic disputes. Any conflict between species must now be brought before a human-led mediation council, before military action can be considered. The galaxy agreed to this because no one wanted to fight humans. We had all seen what they were capable of. The judge leaned forward, her 3 eyes focused intently on the Krillian commander. Commander Vex Thor, you have testified about human combat capabilities, their endurance, their adaptability, and their refusal to surrender. But this tribunal was convened to investigate potential war crimes committed during the conflict. Do you have testimony relevant to these charges? Vex Thor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was clear and firm. Yes, I do. The Krillian Empire is accused of various atrocities during the war, targeting civilian populations, attacking medical personnel, using chemical weapons on populated areas, executing prisoners, and orbital bombardment of cities. These charges are all true. I witnessed many of these acts. I participated in some of them. The chamber erupted in murmurs. The judge called for silence. Vex Thor continued, his voice steady despite the damning nature of his admission. The High Command authorized these actions because we were desperate. Every conventional battle cost us more than we could afford. Every engagement with human forces resulted in casualties that shocked our leadership. So we escalated. We broke the rules of warfare because we believed it was the only way to win. But humans are also accused of war crimes. The charges include excessive force, refusal to accept surrender, execution of Krillian officers, and the use of banned weapons. The prosecution seeks to prove that both sides committed atrocities, that both species share equal blame for the horrors of the war. Vex Thor's claws gripped the platform edge. I am here to tell you that this is not true. The judge's eyes widened. Explain. Humans fought with ferocity that terrified us. They were brutal, efficient, and absolutely merciless in combat. They killed thousands of Krillian soldiers without hesitation, but they followed the rules of warfare even when we did not. His voice grew stronger. When humans captured Krillian soldiers, they treated them according to the galactic conventions. Prisoners received medical care, adequate food, and humane treatment. I know this because I spoke with returned prisoners. Many were confused by this treatment. We had been told humans were savage animals who tortured and killed prisoners. Instead, they were professionals who followed established protocols. When humans recaptured colonies where we had established occupation forces, they allowed Krillian civilians to evacuate safely. They could have massacred our people in revenge for our attacks on their civilians. They did not. They gave us time to leave, provided transport, and even supplied food for the journey. Vex Thor's voice took on a tone of wonder. After the Battle of Armstrong Colony, human forces captured approximately 3,000 Krillian soldiers, including myself. We expected execution. We had starved their people, bombed their homes, and killed their families. By any measure of justice, they had the right to kill us. Instead, a human medic treated my wounds. A human soldier shared his rations with me. A human commander explained that I would be held as a prisoner of war and released when the conflict ended. I asked him why. Why show mercy to someone who had tried to exterminate his species? The commander's voice grew soft. He said, "Because when this war ends, we have to live in the same galaxy. I'd rather live with former enemies who know we treated them with honor than with ghosts who curse us for cruelty. We fight hard, but we don't fight dirty. That's what makes us different." Those words haunted me through 2 years of captivity. I watched human guards treat Krillian prisoners with respect, even after news arrived of more Krillian atrocities. I watched human doctors save Krillian lives with the same dedication they showed to their own wounded. I watched humans demonstrate the values they claimed to believe in, even when it would have been easier to abandon those values. Vexathor looked around the tribunal chamber. Yes, humans fought with terrible efficiency. Yes, they killed many of us, but they killed in battle according to the rules of warfare. They did not execute prisoners. They did not torture. They did not target civilians deliberately. When Krillian forces were surrounded and attempted to surrender, humans accepted that surrender. There were incidents, of course. Individual humans who acted outside orders, who committed acts that violated protocol. But these were exceptions, and those individuals were punished by their own command. The human military maintained discipline even in the worst conditions. His voice grew firm. The Krillian Empire, by contrast, authorized atrocities as official policy. We targeted civilians intentionally. We executed prisoners. We used chemical weapons. These were not rogue soldiers acting against orders. These were orders given by the High Command and carried out by officers like myself. The prosecutor stood clearly agitated. "Commander, are you stating that the Krillian Empire bears sole responsibility for war crimes committed during the conflict?" "Yes," Vexathor said without hesitation. "That is exactly what I am stating. But humans killed millions of Krillian soldiers. They destroyed entire fleets. They invaded and occupied our worlds." Vexathor's voice cut through the prosecutor's objections. "They fought a war we started. They defended themselves against an aggressor. They fought hard and they fought smart. But they fought honorably. The blood of millions is on Krillian claws, not human hands." The chamber fell silent. The judge spoke carefully. "Commander Vexathor, you understand that this testimony may result in charges being filed against you personally?" "I understand. I accept whatever judgment this tribunal renders. I have carried the guilt of my actions for 15 years. Perhaps punishment will bring some measure of peace." The judge nodded slowly. "You have one final question to answer. Knowing what you know now, having witnessed humanity's capabilities both in war and in peace, what do you believe is the most important lesson the galaxy must learn from this conflict?" Vexathor was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute conviction. "The most important lesson is this. Humanity's true terror is not their brutality. It is not their endurance, their adaptability, or their refusal to surrender. These things are frightening, yes, but they are not what makes humans unique. What makes humans truly terrifying is that they can be victorious and still show mercy. They can win completely and still treat their defeated enemies with dignity. They can have every reason for revenge and still choose honor instead." His voice grew passionate. "Every species in this galaxy understands how to fight. We understand conquest, domination, and survival of the strongest. But humans understand something more. They understand that true strength includes restraint. They understand that how you win matters as much as whether you win. The Krillian Empire tried to break humanity through atrocity. We thought fear would weaken them. Instead, it made them more determined. But when they won, they did not respond with atrocity. They responded with the very values we tried to destroy. They proved that honor and strength are not opposites." Vexathor's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "That is what makes them terrifying. We can understand a brutal enemy. We can understand a merciless conqueror. Those things fit within our worldview. But an enemy who wins with honor, who shows mercy from a position of strength, who chooses compassion when they have earned the right to cruelty, that is something we cannot predict. That is something we cannot defend against. Because if you know your enemy will torture you if you surrender, you fight to the death. But if you know your enemy will treat you fairly, you might surrender. If you know your enemy will occupy your worlds and allow your people to live in peace, you might not resist as hard.